Hey everybody, this is Roberto Blake of RobertoBlake.com, geeking out with you today over the new Windows 10 operating system, and I will be comparing it to the experience of the Mac OSX operating system. Now, as many of you know, if you've been watching the channel, I use both the iMac, but I also use my Asus laptop, which is now running Windows 10 since that was released in July. Now, unlike everybody else on YouTube who wanted to rush out and do a review of it the day after it came out, I decided that I actually need to play with it, actually need to get a feel for it, and see what it's all about and how I'm actually using it in my day-to-day workflow. So I've been doing that for a while now, and I really feel like it's one of the best Windows experiences I think I've actually ever had. And it led me to think about, well, how do I feel whenever I'm transitioning from working over on the laptop to working over on the Mac desktop? What is the difference in the experience? And the thing is, I'm not noticing the tremendous gap in the experience that I used to feel from Windows 8.1 going back to the Mac. I feel like this experience of Windows is closer to what I really liked about Windows 7, and then it addressed some of the pain points that I've had with Windows all along. The performance and the speed is a lot better. Now, I think that what Mac is getting ready to do with OS X El Capitan that's coming out later this fall will probably have us have to reiterate this conversation at some point, but I feel that right now the gap between a Windows experience and a Mac experience is not nearly as wide as it once was. There are things that, as someone who does photography and design work, that I do prefer about the Mac OS X experience. For example, I do like the fact that I can natively preview a lot of my Adobe application files directly in the Mac without having to do anything special or have special software plugins installed. So that's actually really convenient. As an Adobe fan, I know that I can circumvent this with Adobe Bridge in either platform, but just being able to do it in the actual operating system is preferable. The same thing with the RAW files from Nikon and Sony and Canon. You can go ahead and you can preview those RAW files in the Mac without doing anything, whereas you have to install special plugins and drivers and so on and so forth to do that on the Windows side. The other thing is the Windows native applications themselves. A lot of them for general things like listening to music and so on and so forth are not as nice as the experience that you get in Mac, but it's really not all that bad. I could do, and probably will do, a walkthrough video of Windows 10 in the near future, and I'll have to screen record that over on the laptop, and that's perfectly fine to do. But really, I just wanted to talk about what I'm experiencing as someone who does graphic design and photography and digital art using both. The results that I'm having in Adobe are fine either way. There's no real difference in my video editing workflow over on the Windows side versus on the Mac. It's not any harder for me to do video editing. In fact, I have a video editing project that I'm specifically doing on the Windows laptop because it requires me to be a little more mobile for doing that particular project and working on that client's work. But I don't feel that there's any real significant difference in the experience or the gap of performance that isn't attributable to the difference in specs and the difference between using a laptop and a desktop. I don't feel like, aside from those things, that there's any real gap in the experience of what it's like to edit video there. So editing video in Windows 10 is about the same for me. I use Adobe Premiere Pro, so it's not like I'm missing out on anything from Final Cut Pro because I prefer Adobe Premiere. So that's not bothering me. Editing audio, it's about the same. That's no big deal there. I would say that for photography, the seconds in your workflow, assuming that you haven't installed a plugin, which I have, to deal with this, then you really won't experience anything different in editing your photography in a Windows laptop versus a Mac, assuming that you've put a plugin in place that allows you to see your RAW files without having to do anything special, which I have. Then that's not an issue for you. If you haven't, then you'd have the extra step of Bridge or Lightroom before you actually start to edit and work on the files, so that could be problematic. As far as my graphic design work, again, aside from being able to preview certain things, no big deal there. It's not really any different. The Adobe applications are performing just fine in Windows 10, the same way they would in Mac OS X. I know people like to tout that Macs never crash, Macs never crash. Look, this Mac has crashed repeatedly, regardless of how much RAM it's had in it, and right now it's currently running 12 gigs of RAM. It's crashed Adobe applications before. That happens. And I don't necessarily blame the operating system for that. That has more to do with the program itself. So it's really irrelevant to say that, well, Windows computers crash the programs more, Macs crash them less. It's like, look, everybody owns a Mac has seen the beach ball of death at one point or another. So I need Mac people to kind of get off their high horse there. But in my personal opinion, if I were going to rate the two operating systems, I would say that the Mac OSX experience would get probably something like a 97 rating from me, and that the Windows 10 experience would still get like maybe a 93 or a 94. So they both still get A's. One gets an A plus maybe, and one gets an A minus. They're still both viable, and I just feel like one is more convenient for certain things than the other. If I were doing nothing but web browsing, or if I was doing nothing but word processing, or if I was doing nothing but web design, then they would be equal. But because of the type of work I do, there's a better experience, but only marginally better on the Mac. But that's my opinion of the two platforms as someone who uses both of them every day. If you use them both every day, I would love to know what you think about the comparison between the two in the comment section below. Anyway, like this video if you like it. Don't forget to subscribe. Check out the other awesome content on the channel. As always, you guys, thanks so much for watching and geeking out with me over Windows 10 versus Mac OS X.